Hello, we are Ben, Rebecca, and Lucy, a digital nomad family from Alaska. Although at this point in life, we feel more at home traveling the world.
In October of 2021, we shipped our 4x4 camper van Denny from America to Europe and spent 12 months traveling and living in 12 countries, all while working from the road.
Now it's time for a break. So we left Denny in France, flew to Southern California, and we rented a place on the beach just south of the border in Baja for the winter.
Hello from La Misión, Baja, California, Mexico. Hope you're having a great day. Welcome to our makeshift studio here at our winter home while we take a break from the road. This video is going to be what we have historically called a studio session, where we just kind of chat with you about things. And the topic of this video is going to be the most asked questions we've received in our past year of traveling in Europe. And these are questions in person and what we have received from you, the viewers on the channel. So the first question is, why did you go to Europe?
All right, well, I think that we have to put a little bit of context and keep this in mind as we go through these questions. We started this journey really actually before you ever saw us leave the States. We started the plans in early summer 2021. So remember what the world was like back then. I know we all want to forget it. The bottom line is, by the time summer 2021 rolled around, we were like, we'll go east, we'll go west, we'll go south. Whatever opens first, we're going. And it happened that Europe was the first to open. That simple. But it does lead to the next question that people always ask, which is, why didn't you just go do the PanAm?
Yeah, we are already on the North American continent. Might as well just head south. And we were strongly considering that in the summer of 2020, right after the pandemic started. Everything just kind of locked down and we were chomping at the bit, desperate to do new things and stop driving the same roads over and over and over again. But the problem with doing the Pan American at that time was, you got to remember what the world was like, but borders in Central America were closed. So you could only get so far. Mexico gives you a 6-month tourist visa. So we were gonna be like, 6 months in Mexico? Sure, we will take it. But then the borders did start to open up, but they did not open up to people like us. And this was a very big, challenging aspect of our travels for this period of our life. And Europe is amazing. There's so many countries and cultures all crammed into this neat little area, which is not so little once you're there because there's so many things to do. And it was the original plan. So the summer of 2021, there were the YouTubers making videos. Life looked good in Europe.
It sure did.
Yeah. But by the fall and winter of 2021, it had changed.
Next question that comes from viewers and people in person is, how did you get to Europe? The simple answer is, we drove the truck to Baltimore and put it on a roll-on, roll-off ship across the Atlantic to Zeebrugge, Belgium. Ben will often make jokes with people if he feels like they have a sense of humor, though. And
only the few.
Yeah, he'll tell them we drove it across the polar ice caps, which lends itself to the next question that we got almost every day while we were in Europe was, are you really from Alaska?
Yeah, that license plate on the truck is a conversation starter. And yes, we are from Alaska.
Yes.
It's where we own our home. It's where we have our businesses registered. It is home, although we just feel more at home traveling at this point in our lives. But it was funny because we would be sitting in the truck at night and just doing our normal thing, and you'd hear people walking by in a foreign language. And don't take this as any insult, because we just hear blah, 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 Alaska, blah, blah, Alaska, blah, blah, Alaska.
We couldn't understand anything.
The only word we could understand was Alaska. And it was adorable, but it really made me think, like, how we take it for granted But apparently, Alaska is this very exotic, not tropical,
I think it's
exotic.
exceptional to see plates from the States to begin with, but then Alaska just takes it to the next level.
This next question is quite relevant because we are digital nomads, but how did you get internet? And it was easy in some places, and it was very difficult in other places because we were unfamiliar with it. For example, Croatia, we got these little T-Mobile 7-day unlimited SIM cards for, I think it was roughly about 12 euros, give or take. And so that was roughly about $48 a month for unlimited internet. That was a good deal. There was a bit of a learning curve in France because here's what you do is you get SIM cards and you have to go on a hunt for SIM cards and a company that has more travel type of SIM cards, and you don't need to have like a local credit card number or a local address. So it is a challenge. For example, we had some struggles that rainbow is actually really cool right now.
Oh, wow.
But we ended up finding free mobile, but we ended up having to type in and find a free mobile kiosk, not the free mobile stores. So how did we get internet? We found SIM cards, put them in a phone, and made a hotspot. And that's another thing. You want to make sure that the SIM card you buy allows you to make a hotspot.
That's right. That lends itself to the next question. How do your phones work?
Oh my.
Well, let me tell you how you know if you're a world traveler. This one is for Mexico and it doesn't work in Europe, but we bought it in Alaska.
Thinking it'd work in Europe.
And then these two are our burner phones that we bought for Europe because the Alaska one didn't work. Like the European phone system is different from the American phone system. We figured out, and don't ask me how, I don't understand. But we got two because most of the time we backed up our service. We get two different companies in each country, except for like Croatia, T-Mobile was amazing. And we also both wanted to have cell phone service. If I got out of the truck to go get groceries and Ben stayed, I needed to be able to talk to him. And then we have our own phones from the United States. Wait, this one. These are our Apple iPhones from
American
America
phones,
with
Alaska
AT&T.
area code phone numbers.
And we would use these if we got in a pinch. For $10 a day, we could turn them on with AT&T and have unlimited Wi-Fi or internet up to 15 gigs a month per phone. So 24-hour period, $10. And we used it usually on average 7 days a month, sometimes 10 in like France where it was really bad.
Well, once we got it dialed in for each country, we used it less.
But then we would use these synced up with our hotspot phones from Europe, our burner phones, so that Wi-Fi calling worked on them, all of our apps worked on them, we worked from these phones, our email, everything worked like normal, but we weren't using our US cell phone service, so it was cheaper.
We were using the hotspot off of one of the burner phones, and Google Fi and T-Mobile do have global plans. But they're great if you're going on a holiday or something like that.
Months.
But if you're going to be gone for so long, Google Fi or T-Mobile will just cut you off and say you need to return back to your home country if you'd like your phone to work.
We've heard of very few people who've traveled in the long term with one of those phone plans where they don't end up with a problem and get their phone service shut off. So we kept AT&T in the States, used it when we needed it, and we bought local SIM cards and synced up to them with Wi-Fi for our phones and our computers and our TVs and everything.
But yeah, in the end, SIM cards, making a hotspot is what worked. And I don't know about other phones, but these iPhones, friends and family could call just like normal. So our phones work like normal if Wi-Fi calling was on and we were obviously hooked up to internet.
Well, how our phones worked lends itself to asking, how is the internet and phone service in Europe? And much to Ben's chagrin,
It was too good.
it was amazing. I can count on one hand all the nights we went without cell phone service in the entire year we were there. A couple nights in Croatia, a night in Wales. I honestly can't remember other nights besides that. But far better coverage than what we get in the vastness of America, where you have lots of dead spots and whatnot. So fantastic if you want to be able to stay in touch and check your phones and use your computers.
But if you're like me, and sure, my business, I need to upload videos every now and then and maybe reply to some comments, but I could just do without the smartphone and internet thing. Stick me on a deserted island, I'd be fine.
Next question that we get asked on the regular very often: what do you do for health insurance? The short answer is Cigna Global. We found this plan in 2018. I did a ton of research on a whole bunch of different companies because we knew we were at the point where we were getting ready to go overseas. We had become fully self-employed that year, no longer eligible for employee benefits. And we looked at the marketplace because we were still in the States, and it was very expensive for the two of us. So when I started looking at global plans, it was much more reasonably priced, and we were thinking we were really close to ready to leave at that time. So we went ahead and got on Cigna Global. Now you can opt into plans where you don't have more than 60 days of coverage in the US, and it's a lot cheaper. We opted to where we're covered all the time. It's also Japan. Apparently they have expensive health insurance too, healthcare too. We pay right now $1,100 a month for the two of us. When we started out, it was $850, but they raise it between $50 and $90 every year. So,
Criminals.
well, and then we have a $3,000 deductible per year, $1,500 inpatient, $1,500 outpatient. So most of the time we only end up paying up to the $1,500. We haven't, knock on wood, needed the inpatient yet.
I would like to throw in that we chose for the highest level of coverage.
Yep.
So that essentially means no matter what happens, we will never have to pay, for the two of us together, more than $3,000 per year.
Yeah.
When you're looking at catastrophic things, if you even have to pay 20% of a major catastrophe, that could send people into bankruptcy.
Mm-hmm.
$3,000, it's going to be a kick to the nuts, but it's not going to send us into bankruptcy.
No. And the great thing about this insurance is for that $1,100, you get health insurance. We paid, that's included dental and vision. It is repatriation of your remains if you pass away from your home. It even includes compassion visits. So if something happens to one of us and we're far away, they'll actually pay in a lifetime for 5 visits for a family member to come out and see you while you're sick, or come help and take care of you, or whatever needs to happen. So you get a lot more than just basic healthcare with that. And there's ways to make it cheaper if you don't opt into the vision and dental and all of those extra
And being
things.
able to stay in America for more than 6 months at a time. Well, yeah. So being
60 days.
60 days. Another thing I wanted to add is that since we're self-employed and we're not on a group plan, you kind of get screwed in America. And when you go through private insurance, they have the right to rider or make exemptions on things. For example, my back injuries, they're ridered, so they're not going to cover anything on my back. That's just one example. It really does seem criminal to me, because how do they expect anybody to have a perfect, flawless health history? So, in closing, that's what we do for health insurance. This next question we actually get asked a lot, more so in person with friends and family that we meet since we have come home.
Yeah.
What is your favorite country? That is a surprisingly difficult question. First of all, we only did like 12 countries, and there's a lot more in Europe. And it's also very subjective, because it could be like, oh, what country had your favorite food? What country was your favorite for natural stuff? What was your favorite for free camping? So it's very subjective. For example, there's something I really liked about Spain. They have a unique philosophy on life, and they really savor life. So people go to work from sometime in the morning hours, usually 9 o'clock, maybe till 2. And then they have what's called siesta. The restaurants open up. Yeah, people eat up, sit down for a very long 3-hour lunch, drink wine. Then, maybe even if you're close enough to home, you have a nap. And then the restaurants close, and we'll just call it the hardware store, opens back up from 5 to 9. And then the restaurants open back up when everybody gets off work from 9 till midnight. I kind of like it. It does definitely encourage day drinking when you get the fixed pre-menus, which is like an appetizer, an entree, a dessert, and a bottle of water costs the same as a bottle of wine. So
it's included in your meal.
Yeah, and it's included in your meal. So what are you gonna do?
It took some getting used to, though, from the perspective of Americans usually eat lunch around noon. So you had to wait until 2 to eat, and then you had to make sure all of your errands were ran by 2, or you had to wait until evening. Yeah. So it presented challenges from the perspective of just living life.
As for favorite country, I don't have one. They all have so many really cool things. I will say Ireland had hands down the best free camping scene that we discovered in our travels. Everybody was just so warm, welcoming, and nice. France is an amazing country. Gotta love that place. It's a shame we didn't spend more time in Italy, and Croatia was cool, very unique. So that is a tough question.
It's not for me, France. It's always France. It's always been France. It'll probably always be France.
So you might see us living in France one day.
This next question comes in the comments very often, and then when people in person see we have Lucy, they ask, does she travel with you? What's that like? Honestly, it's quite easy to travel with Lucy. You have to make sure that the company that you're booking your airfare on, the airline, allows pets in the cabin overseas. You usually have to do some paperwork before you leave the States the first time so that she can get a pet passport. When you get to Europe, you have to go get the pet passport within the first 4 months you're there. Otherwise, you pay a little extra for them to fly under the seat with you. Well, you sit in the seat, they sit under it.
Small dogs.
Small dogs. Big dogs go in cargo. And they are very welcoming of animals in Europe. Lucy went everywhere with us, and it was, if ever, a problem. Maybe one time we got turned away.
I can't think of any.
No. Maybe like one store or something. But anyway, very welcoming of pets. And the only challenge we actually had was when we were getting ready to come home, we had to fly out of France because Lucy can't fly in and out of Ireland or the UK. So we drove back to France so that she could fly home with us.
Can I also throw in that dates matter? We ran into a hiccup in Spain. Lucy's 1-year rabies vaccination certificate expired just by a handful of days, and we knew it was coming, but we were thinking, we'll just get her rabies booster when we get her deworming for going to England. But if it has expired, you have to wait, was it 2 or 3?
21 days.
21 days. So that was a hiccup we experienced. So when traveling with a dog, just know that dates matter. Well, the next question is probably going to be a rather long answer, but what was the most difficult part about us traveling in Europe during the time period of October 21 to October 22? And hands down, it was the issues related to the pandemic and being people like us. There were all kinds of loops that we had to jump through. There were things we just flat out could not do. There were borders that checked us and turned us away and made us go get a test and come back, and there was nobody at the border. So there was like highly inconsistent. If you wanted to go to festivals, you had to have this test to prove your condition. And it was very, very challenging. And I just got to say, it felt very much like a police state. And the compliance, American perspective here, that shit would not fly in America. The whole having to show your app to go to a Christmas market, or not being able to eat inside a restaurant unless you've had this certain thing happen to your body or put in your body, but it was just...
Well, there were even places that it was double checks. So you had to have it and you had to have a negative test for it. It was complicated, much more so than the States.
So the last thing I have to say about that is, by the time spring and summer of 2022 rolled around, all those rules and mandates were unwound. And at that time in history, who knows what the future holds, it was life as normal. So the next aspect of being difficult is it's expensive over there, despite being over there in a relatively favorable time for the dollar to euro / pound exchange rate. But you're there to try food, so that means you're going to be eating out a little more often. You're there to see things and do things. Fuel is definitely more expensive. So I'm a cheapskate by heart. Just probably runs in my genetics. So I had a really hard time.
You just can't help yourself.
I know. It really felt like we were hemorrhaging money at so many points.
I think from my perspective, the most challenging thing, aside from the ones you've mentioned, was the constantly changing language barrier. I speak decent French.
Give yourself more credit.
Okay. Ben speaks Spanish, but it didn't really work in Spain. I was doing better with my French because it's Castilian Spanish, not Latin American Spanish, which is what Ben is really comfortable with. And we get to Mexico and he's like, blah, 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 and he loses me. But in places like Croatia, where the alphabet is different, the language is like nothing you've ever seen before. And at the time we were trying to be careful, so we'd order groceries from an app instead of going to the store when we could, and stuff like ordering food and whatnot. If there wasn't a translation, it was just like and it was
sorry.
Siri says I'm sorry. And it was just exhausting because it was every day, that was unrelenting. But it also became this just normal state. And I realized how much so when we came home, because we went out to eat with family right around Christmas time. And I walked into a building in this restaurant and my mind went, what language do I need to speak to this person? What language? And then I was like, oh, English, it's okay. So it really does just become this natural state where you're like French, Spanish, Italian, German, because at least you can say hello, goodbye, thank you, some basics at least.
But it is amazing how many people do speak English nowadays. And one of the things I commonly asked is, where did you learn English? And it was I was expecting to hear like movies and music like Lady Gaga, Adele, or Rolling Stones. But depending on who we spoke to in their age, it was YouTube videos and video gaming. Yep. So that was quite fascinating.
It's a change from our generation where it was movies and music. Yeah.
Okay, the next difficult thing, and I know, wow, there are so many difficult things, but the Schengen, yeah, it is hard to travel. The Schengen zone was probably one of the, next to the whole pandemic stuff, most difficult thing, because as Americans, non-EU citizens, we are only allowed 90 days in the Schengen countries. Schengen countries are pretty much the brunt of the popular main European countries that come to your mind when
Google
thinking about Europe. And you're only allowed 90 days. So that means you have to get from roughly, well, Croatia's now Schengen.
Not yet.
Yes, it is.
I did
It
term
happened.
this year.
Yeah. So you'd now have to make to Serbia or Romania, or England is not EU, Brexit. England is its own place. Morocco is its own place. Then
Albania.
Belarus and some of those northeast kind of former Russian bloc countries. So you're really on the go a lot. And 90 days is not a lot of time when you are working from the road. 90 days of straight holiday, not having to worry about any other responsibilities. Sure, you could easily
And not
do
for an
it.
extended period of time.
But 90 days, the clock is constantly ticking. And I personally felt a lot of pressure, just tick, 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 knowing that our time was limited in this location. And then you need to start thinking exit strategy. Oh, should I plan on departing 2 weeks early just to leave room for variables? So the Schengen zone, and I have a new observation. I'm wondering if slow travel, like what we want to do, is infinitely more difficult than fast travel versus doing the whole Pan American Highway in 1 6-month jaunt. You know, we're always on the go, but then you don't really run into visa issues. I'm sure you run into plenty of other issues, but all right.
Trade one set of issues for another, I think. I, on the other hand, I mean, I knew the Schengen clock was always ticking, but it didn't bother me quite to the extent you did.
Somewhere where I also struggled was, at least in our travels, we did not come across a lot of wide open natural places. And I say this because the YouTube channels that we've seen when they come to North America, they are just astonished by everything west of the Rockies, these giant expanses of BLM land or national forest land. Well, there are some natural places, but they're really not as big of natural places. So I am, like we said, I'd be happy on a deserted island. I'm happy in the middle of the desert without cell phone service as well, or high up in the Rockies, anything like that.
I think the last thing that we had a challenge with, and it's, I think you experience this wherever you travel, it's more just that we've traveled the US and Mexico and Canada so long it's become less of an issue, but the lack of local knowledge to make things easier, like, oh, we've driven down that road before, or oh, Google says to go this way, but don't go this way instead, or even just knowing where to get stuff done, you know, a phone, a SIM card at a tobacco shop, or go here to take care of this issue. It was just a whole new world. And that's what we're there to experience. But for the day-to-day living stuff and figuring out the things for the dog and, you know, phones were always the big thing.
Or where to find tampons that weren't square.
Oh yeah, I forgot that one.
That could go under hate as well.
Yeah, that might be the thing I hated the most.
Square tampons.
But more on that later maybe. But yeah, just having to figure everything out to get your day-to-day life things. It's different from when you're just traveling for a short vacation and everything can wait till you get back home. When you're living in a travel mode, you still have to do all these things. Find an eye doctor when you're having an eye problem, or find a vet when the dog needs shots, and those sorts of things were challenging and just made for wearing you out. You got tired, road weary.
Like we are now, and why we're here in Baja. Next up is the question, did you or do you get lonely? And it was rather lonely over there for us because we are not in our home country where there's a lot of friends and family located everywhere, but also because there were not very many tourists, are we tourists, but people from the North American continent in Europe traveling like
or
we
Australia.
Are right now. Yeah. So, yeah, we did have the pleasure of running into Dan and Marlene and the kids from Molly Mish. That was great. We had a wonderful time with Fabia and Isabella, and that was a great week or so, or week and a half together.
Time with Roman Radford.
Yeah,
and Troy.
Exactly, in England. But generally speaking, when you're a traveling couple like us, whether you're in North America or Europe, it can get lonely.
But the times when you did meet people, you're so hungry to visit and talk to people that everybody just, I don't know, you bonded very quickly too. It was fun.
And
when we did see people.
I can count, I think probably on one hand, I'm sure there were more, but people from America that were either traveling Europe or had married somebody in Europe, Americans on the road over there right now. I'm sure there were more, but I can only think of about 5 people or couples. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's a small world and lonely in a tight van.
Next question on the list. What did we enjoy about being in Europe? I think first and foremost was I just said how difficult things were because they were different and not like home. But that was also the thing to enjoy. Nothing was the same. It smelled different. It tasted different. The architecture was like nothing you see in the States. The people are different. Everything different. And that's what we were craving, was something new. New places to see, new things to do, new foods to eat, new people to meet. So that was, I think, most definitely the thing that we enjoyed, even though it was challenging.
I think that could be all just summed up into the spirit of travel and exploring new lands. Mm-hmm. That begs the question of what did you not like? And something I struggled with was there are places to camp for free, but it's hard to find places to camp for free for like 7 to 14 days like you can on BLM land. And when you're working from the road, having to move every 2 or 3 days, it really inhibits your productivity. And then it gets exhausting having to move and move and move. And here in the States, I'm just going to say it, our travel budget, and I guess even here in Mexico, it did not always, generally doesn't ever account for spending $50 to $75 for some campgrounds. Now, bear in mind, in Spain, we found some pretty good deals in the $20 a night range. And we jumped on those for stability. But having to move all the time was probably one of the biggest struggles. But that's purely because we are working and trying to manage everything.
Most common question we've gotten asked in the last few months is, why did you come home? The bottom line is probably the biggest thing. Ben needed to have knee surgery.
And that wasn't happening in Denny.
No, it was not possible for that to happen. Climbing in and out of the bed, I didn't even realize to what extent it wouldn't be possible with needing to kneel to get into Denny's bed. But we were tired. We hadn't had a break for 2 years from Denny, hadn't been off the road in 2 years, which you guys know, if you've been around for a while, we usually go home to Alaska in the summers, and we haven't done that the last couple of years. And
why
it was
didn't
nice
we
to
go
have.
home?
Well, the house is rented out, and
not the whole house, bedrooms.
No, but when we left, the country, we decided to make that a little bit more so that it was contributing to its expenses, and so we rented it out. And that means that if we go home, we still have our bedroom, our office, our bathroom, our living room, but we would be sharing our kitchen and our laundry room with tenants. And I don't think they would like that, or we would enjoy it, especially for a whole winter. Not to mention that it's dark and cold and snowy there. And we really were looking forward to, after a cold winter in Europe last year, some sunshine and warmth.
The next big question is, do we miss Denny? And I really feel this one is a double-edged sword, because We like what Denny can do for us and the places Denny can take us. But let's face it, living in a 13-foot box is challenging. Living on the road is challenging. We just kind of addressed that. So yes, I very much do miss Denny. We got all this space. What's not to love about that for this winter? But on a personal note, it has been very difficult being here in Southern California and Baja in the winter when so many of our friends and fellow travelers are all heading down in their adventure mobiles and exploring Baja. But hey, we got this nice place. We got a cool little Honda Civic now. So I guess life is good. And what are your thoughts?
I miss the places Denny takes us, and I miss the feeling of climbing in the truck in the morning and not knowing what's coming for the day. I don't miss the kitchen or the shower or
Toilet.
sleeping on the inside of the bed.
Toilet?
Yeah, I definitely like the flush toilet. That's a nice feature. I love having a comfortable place to sit and relax that isn't the bed. And we've been in Denny for 4 years now. It'll be 5 years this summer. So that's a long time in a tiny little truck, and it's so nice to have space. But like Ben said, it doesn't mean that I don't miss the freedom and the adventure that Denny offers. It was just time for a break.
This last question is kind of irrelevant. We've answered it in several others, but are we done traveling? That's obviously a big fat no. This is our break here in Mexico is just what it is. It's a break, an attempt to make this dream lifestyle of ours a little more sustainable and find balance in our lives.
Hopefully, this is the best of both worlds because we're here having a rest, but we know that when we're done later this spring, we can book a plane ticket and head back to Denny in France whenever we're ready. I think we're going to call it a wrap. We're done. Thanks for joining us. Hope you have a fantastic day. We'll see you in the next one. Made it.